Everyone. This lesson is the second part of our lesson on respiration. The learning objective is I will learn how sporting activities are affected by duration and intensity. Before we get into the details of this, there's two key things that you just need to be recapped on. The first one is the equation for aerobic respiration. Glucose plus oxygen produces energy plus carbon dioxide plus water. The equation for anaerobic respiration is glucose without the oxygen produces energy plus lactic acid. The absolutely crucial concept there is that oxygen is only present in aerobic respiration, doesn't feature in anaerobic respiration. Hopefully the rest of this presentation will explain why. So we'll look at aerobic respiration first. Now, two key things that you need to be aware of are that any activity, whether it's training or a sporting activity, which is a long duration, will be matched up with low intensity. When those two things are paired together, that's what makes it aerobic. You can maintain the performance for a long period of time, but you can only do that at a low intensity. So oxygen is taken in and is circulated around the body to the working muscles, but you can only maintain that circulation of oxygen if the event or the activity is going on for a long time at a low intensity. The idea being that if you're doing that, you're improving cardiovascular endurance because you're doing it for an extended period of time. Any sort of long distance event or long distance training, you'd be doing it at a slightly lower intensity, but you'd be doing it for an extended period of time. Sports that you might look at there are things like marathon running or long distance cycling. So the guys that do the Tour de France, any event like that would absolutely be using the aerobic energy system because they go on for a long time at a low intensity. In terms of training, things like continuous training, which you do at a relatively low intensity, sort of low to moderate, but you'd be doing it for quite a long period of time. You don't go for a jog for 5 minutes. It would be at least 20 minutes that you do it for, and the longer you do it, the fitter that you'd be. In terms of intensity, we're looking at 60 to 80% of our maximum heart rate. So at 60%, you should be able to maintain that for a reasonably long period of time. That's the idea being it's a sort of gentle jog. And as you start pushing up towards 70 and then towards 80%, that's still aerobic. You obviously have to be fitter to be able to maintain that level of work, but anywhere between 60 and 80% of your maximum heart rate, you'd be working in the aerobic training zone. It would have to be, for it to be effective, it would have to be done for at least 20 minutes. The opposite of that is then anaerobic respiration. Again, in terms of duration and intensity, it's the opposite of what aerobic was. So for anaerobic, it's short duration and high intensity. So rather than long duration, it's only a short period of time that you can do it for. Because you're doing it for a short period of time, you can perform it at a much higher intensity. You can't maintain that level of effort for an extended period of time, so you can't have long duration and high intensity. It has to be paired up as presented here. When you're working like this, the idea is that it improves speed and power. So you don't perform any activities or you don't perform any training where you're working at that really, really high level of intensity for an extended period of time. So it matches up with speed and power, which are kind of explosive movements that require a much kind of higher burst of energy rather than anything that could be maintained. Sports like the 100-meter sprint, weightlifting, any throwing events in athletics, or even activities within a particular sport, like an overlap in football or a sprint down the basketball court or jumping up for a rebound in netball, anything like that which is short and explosive, that would be anaerobic because it's done over a short period of time, but it's at a much higher intensity of the movement. You can't maintain circulation of oxygen for that extended period of time. In terms of training, we're looking at HIIT training, so that high intensity interval training, and things like weight training, where you do a small number of repetitions and then you have to rest in between each set. So the recovery allows you to get oxygen circulating again. You can't just keep pushing those weights over and over and over and over again and expect to maintain the same level of performance, because your muscles tire and they start crying out for the oxygen, which after a very short period of time is gone. In terms of the intensity, you're looking at 80 to 90% of your maximum heart rate. So aerobic 60 to 80%, anaerobic is the next level up. So as soon as you move past 80%, 80% is what we call the threshold. Anywhere between 80 and 90% of your maximum heart rate, you'd be working anaerobically. And again, you can only do that for a short period of time. On this slide, it just shows you a selection of questions that, if you've been able to digest all of that information in the presentation, you should be able to answer them from the very beginning with just the equations that you should be able to summarize all the way through to explaining why team games such as football might use a combination of aerobic and anaerobic. All games activities do. When you think about the different types of movements and techniques and effort levels that are required throughout a game of football, it's not just one or the other. When you think about activities like athletics events like sprints or marathon runs or long distance cycling or throwing and jumping events, they're very extreme. They're either very much aerobic or very much anaerobic. Whereas football, netball, basketball, rugby, they're all games events which include a combination of both, for the reason being that you do lots of different types of movements and lots of different techniques and intensity changes throughout those events. Okay, so hopefully that's helped explain it. If you have any questions, then please just let your PE teacher know. Thanks a lot.